The mountain rises like a silent, frozen god. K2, the savage mountain, looms in the Himalayan sky, sharp, jagged, almost vertical. Its glaciers sparkle in the weak morning light, but every shadow hints at danger. For most, it is unreachable. For select few, it is irresistible. David Mercer, 32, has spent years chasing mountains. He's summited Denali, Makalu, and Gusher Brumai. But K2 is a beast, and tonight, he dreams of conquering it. Alone, he stands at base camp, checking his oxygen regulators, tightening his boots, and staring at the looming wall above. Every climber around him murmurs fears and superstitions. It claims people, one whispers. Its weather is a killer. David knows the risks, but he also knows something deeper. The mountain tests not just strength, but the very core of a man's will. He imagines standing on the summit, wind whipping at -50 degrees Celsius, breathing shallow and labored, alone above the clouds. The thought fuels him. He shakes off the doubts, straps his gear, and begins the ascent. The first few hours are routine. Crampons bite into ice, ropes secure him to crevasses, and each step feels purposeful. The mountain is beautiful and merciless. A panorama of peaks stretches endlessly, but the sun fades fast. As evening approaches, the temperature drops, and David begins to feel the first bite of frost creeping into his fingers and toes. He sets up his tent at 7,800 meters, the wind thrashing the fabric like an angry animal. Sleep is shallow. The cold gnaws at him. Outside, the mountain whispers warnings, and the night seems alive. In the death zone, even a small mistake can be fatal. David knows this. Every sound of shifting ice, every howl of wind carries meaning. And yet, he feels alive, exhilarated, ready for tomorrow's push. Dawn breaks pale and weak. The air is thin. Every breath is a labor. David straps on his oxygen mask and begins the next stage of the climb. The slope steepens. Ice axes bite, crampons grip, and with every step, gravity reminds him how fragile life is here. Around him, snow shifts and cracks. One wrong step could send him tumbling hundreds of meters down jagged rock and ice. He passes abandoned tents and frozen bodies, climbers who dared and failed. Their presence is a ghostly warning, but David presses on. Hours pass. The wind picks up, turning into a shriek that slices through his layers of clothing. Snow stings exposed skin. His hands are numb. Fingers no longer respond properly. Every movement requires conscious effort. And then he notices the first warning sign, a slight rumble beneath the ice. A serac is collapsing higher on the ridge. Snow and ice tumble down with terrifying speed. David freezes, instinctively pressing against the mountain wall. The avalanche passes, missing him by meters. His heart races, adrenaline surging. The death zone has no mercy. He is alone. Every climber he trained with is behind or has turned back. He reaches the last camp before the summit, 8,500 meters. His tent is thin and battered, barely sheltering him from the wind. He checks his oxygen. Less than half remains. The next push will require everything. As he climbs toward the summit, the world below vanishes into clouds. Every step is a fight, every breath a challenge. And then, a moment of clarity. He sees the summit just ahead, bathed in pale light. One last push. One last test. David reaches the summit at twilight. The wind is ferocious. Oxygen is nearly depleted. Every inch of exposed skin burns. He snaps a photograph, but the camera almost freezes in his hands. He takes a moment to breathe, to look at the world spread below him. Endless peaks, clouds glowing gold in the dying light. Suddenly, the wind shifts, stronger than ever. A storm, unexpected, barreling up the mountain. Snow and ice whip around him. He realizes he has underestimated the mountain's fury. Turning back is dangerous. The descent is harder than the climb. He begins his way down, step by step, inch by inch. Every movement is calculated. His legs feel like lead. Frostbite starts in his toes. Fingers are numb. The wind tears at his body as if trying to unbalance him, to claim him. Hours pass. Visibility drops to 0. The storm becomes a whiteout. David can barely see the rope lines or the faint outline of the slope ahead. Panic flares. One wrong step could end everything. He forces himself to slow his breathing, to focus. Survival is no longer about the summit. Survival is about reaching the camp alive. David loses the trail. Snow buries the markers. The storm rages, relentless. He digs into a small crevice between ice rocks for shelter, barely fitting his body. Wind howls overhead, battering the mountain. He wraps in his emergency bivouac, shivering violently. Hours stretch into a night of endless cold. Hypothermia creeps in. His hands are frozen solid. Movement becomes agony. Every breath is a labor. Sleep is dangerous. Unconsciousness could mean death. In the darkness, David begins hallucinating. Whispers in the wind, the ghostly outline of climbers fallen years ago, shadows dancing on the ice. The mountain tests him, mocking his isolation. He feels small, a fragile human on an infinite frozen canvas. Yet he refuses to give up. He reminds himself of the basics. Stay put, preserve oxygen, monitor movement, and wait for the storm to abate. Hunger gnaws at him. Thirst dries his mouth. His strength ebbs, but his will remains unbroken. Morning arrives. Visibility is still poor, but the storm slows. David checks his oxygen, adjusts straps, and begins descending slowly. Every step is a gamble. Loose ice, hidden crevasses, wind gusts that could knock him over. The mountain seems alive, each step answering with challenge. David falls once, scraping his hands and face, but regains balance. He forces himself to keep moving. He repeats mantras in his head, small mental exercises to ignore pain and fear. Hours pass. The slope eases slightly. He sees traces of previous climbers. Hope flares. He finds a rope ladder left behind, likely by a team that retreated earlier. Carefully, he descends using it, praying the anchors hold. Night falls again. David's strength is fading. His boots are soaked, his body trembling. He finds a shallow ledge to rest. No tent, no shelter, only the rock face and the raging wind. He wraps in his emergency blanket, shivering violently, fighting frostbite with sheer will. On the third night, David slips into a narrow ice crevasse. He is trapped. Panic sets in, but he forces himself to stay calm. Using his ice axe, he digs and pulls inch by inch, crawling through darkness and ice. Blood from his frozen hands drips onto the ice. His lungs burn. Hours feel like days. Finally, he emerges onto a small ledge with partial shelter from wind. Exhausted, frostbitten, nearly delirious, he surveys the slope ahead. One final push, one final climb down. The sun rises weakly through clouds. David descends carefully, step by step, guided by memory and instinct. He reaches a lower camp, remnants of tents, supplies left by climbers who had retreated. He collapses, weeping, breathing shallow, alive. The next day, David spots a helicopter in the distance. He waves frantically, barely able to stand. The pilots see him and lower a rope. His body is frozen, hands blackened from frostbite, but he is alive. Medical teams evacuate him. Oxygen tanks and blankets save him from near-death hypothermia. Doctors later confirm survival in minus 50 degrees Celsius at that altitude for multiple days is nearly impossible. David reflects on the mountain, on every step he took, and the razor-thin line between life and death. K2 did not give mercy, it tested him. And somehow he survived, alone. He will never forget the death zone, the wind, the ice, and the endless night. But he also knows survival is more than skill. It is will, focus, and refusing to surrender when every part of your body demands it. Some survive, some are claimed, but only those who refuse to surrender live to tell the story. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another unbelievable survival tale. Share it with someone who loves extreme adventure.